Courts in common law may create new precedents in the legal system, i.e., when William the Conqueror came into the country, or William the Bastard, as he should be called, came into the country, took away Englishmen rights, and took away their property and everything. Over time, that hundreds of years, those people took, and their descendants took precedence to their local witan, which was like a local council, and there were then the witans of the earls and then of the king himself in old Anglo-Saxon law. So they were like the Senate, basically. And what is the Senate? It's a glorified court, just like the House of Lords is a glorified court. You could take your case to that court, whether it be local, middle government, or the highest government, and plead your case. And then if everybody agreed within that was a norm of society, that then a precedent had been set. So by that way, it kept law current, rather than it being dead law. I'll go back to the text. Courts in common law may create new precedents in a legal system to stop the Constitution becoming dead law that is not relevant. By bringing it to the court, i.e. a representative body of peers of the citizen, some injustice they may or may not have suffered at the hands or will or conspiracy of another, the citizen forgoes his or her right to vengeance and lays his fate and that of those he accuses to the judgment of the court, which is based on law, i.e. previous precedents in common law, or those which are, say, a government as a manifesto and people vote on it and put that government in power. That is what people's will is, articulated through, and so they can pass laws into a written constitution like the US Constitution. And so that is why the law becomes an agent, as well as the law being above any other thing. So the judgment of the court, which is based on the law, which is also a system of cultural norms about how to solve problems of the abuse of power, dereliction of duties of citizens by citizens or the state, which is their agent. Dereliction of duties to citizens to each other in the nation, and the attempt via coercion to prevent natural rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness being asserted, as well as other lawfully recognised liberties. The state, for instance, as servant of the nation and citizens, has agreed through legal and democratic processes, i.e. common consent, the consent of the commons, which is all of us, and so I'll go back to where I said recognised liberties, that the accused has said to or tried to stop those rights or liberties being asserted. This is why liberties and rights are protected by the executive power, that is the force of the state. The police, the government, ministries, the judges, and and the armed forces and everything else. There are laws and conventions about everything. In the modern world, the nation demands that the state prosecute those accused under due process, and if tried and convicted as guilty, be punished, because there is in any crime two victims. The person who suffered the grievance forgoes their right to vengeance, or could not assert that right because of physical inability or lack of opportunity or lack of ability to assert their own mental will to vengeance, you know, like it, I suppose, like it used to be in Anglo-Saxon times. Thus, you know, or will to vengeance, thus passes that responsibility to the law as agent of the nation, and thus the law, the nation, takes on that role. The law and the nation takes on that role as the second victim. The nation, state, law, society, community, for instance. So in a crime, the state is not completely impartial. Only the process of law is impartial, or the state would be not living up to its legal responsibilities to protect all citizens from harm by those who try to use force, corruption, conspiracy, or coercion to overthrow the consensual norms of the national culture and democracy. So both the human being, the legal conception of a citizen and state, would be victims in a case where infanticide is practiced under modern law, under current law, which this article is by Francesca, Minerva, and Dr. Alberto is seeking to overturn, you know, that law which protects infants from that act, you know. So both the human being and the legal conception of the citizen and state would be victims in a case where infanticide was practiced. So that is why it has not been recognised as being legal. However, in ethical terms and moral terms, we are talking about the concept of innocence and the fact that a human being is a synthesis of different inputs that make up humanity. A human being is both a product of the symbiosis of, you know, memes in society or concepts that recreate themselves, that they adopt as they grow, culture and genetic information forged by the process of natural selection within experience in the context of the environment, as well as the tools which, in the case of maintaining life of the fetus, the baby, infant and adult, these stages in life can be medically defined, but by growth or capability, whereby we examine the whole biological and psychological development of one human being. I mean, there was a BBC series about this, where I forget the professor's name, but he's actually a doctor as well as a professor in ethics. The biological and psychological development of one human being, who is one continuance of unity, not stages, but one human being. You know, so the field of science as tools do not, by describing different stages, describe the whole, nor did empirical methods ever drive towards that goal, because that's not what empiricism is about. But instead sought to find as much information and then let the whole society, via discussion, consent, and the agents of law and state as servants of the individual citizen and the national society and community, decide if science information should be used for a positive or negative outcome. Today, I mean, the same science behind making a nuclear reactor or fusion power, for instance, that can produce electricity for millions of homes, can also be put into a nuclear submarines warheads. I mean, it's up to human beings to decide what to do with science, whether they want to use it for good or ill, you know.